Now on the driver's side of the engine compartment, we're going to go ahead and lift up our fuse box panel here. There's a little clip, just squeeze on that and lift this right up. Now looking at the bottom, what we want to look for is something along here that says fuel pump. If you look right here, I can see that I have a 15 amp fuel pump fuse. So now we're going to pull out the 15 amp fuse. We remember on the little chart we had a 5 amp, a 15 amp for the turn hazards, and then the next 15 amp, the second one right here, is the one for the fuel pump. Go ahead and remove that fuse. Okay, so now we're just going to start up the truck, let it run until it dies out. Now at this point we can go ahead and take that fuse. I'm just going to slide it right back in there, press it in all the way. Double check all my fuses while I'm here actually. We'll double press them all in, and then of course we'll grab that cover and slide it on there. Okay, now we need to move along to removing our negative battery terminal. Now ours has a plow system on it, so it has a whole bunch of extra wiring, but essentially if you were to come right down to this right here, loosen it up, give it a little wiggle, you can remove it from the battery. For me personally, I have a little wing nut here. Let's get that off of there. Remove all the wires from your negative battery terminal. Now we need to get underneath the driver's side rear of the tire, just in front of that left rear tire, and we're going to remove this clip right here. Now with that clip off of there, the next thing we need to do is squeeze on 2 tabs. Right in the center of this area here, there's a gray square, and the same on the opposite side. Just go ahead and squeeze on those, and then we'll draw the line off of there. Now that we have this disconnected, let's follow it along to where it connects onto the frame. Just carefully lift up and away from the frame and it should pop free. Now up near the front of the fuel tank, you're going to have a couple fuel lines that come in and out of the fuel tank. So of course we're going to want to make sure that we go ahead and take these off as well. Fuel might come out of this. A little bit of fuel coming out of there. Do the same for this one. Now let's go ahead and remove this line from the charcoal canister. I'm just going to use my pocket screwdriver. I'll get underneath this lip right here and at the same time carefully press it up. Do the same on the other side here and then we should be able to slide it up and away. Now at this point we'll just wiggle it around and draw it off of the charcoal canister. We're going to move along to the top of the fuel tank, right along the back side here. You're going to find where your fuel inlet comes down and it has a clamp. We need to loosen that clamp and then lift this tube right up and off of the gas tank. Okay, so now that I have the clamp nice and loose, the next thing I'm going to do is just pop that up and off of the fuel tank. Now I'm just going to take a rag and carefully stuff it inside this area, just enough to block it so no fumes come out. Now what you're probably going to notice underneath our truck is we have the rear drive shaft taken out of this. That's for another job. You don't necessarily need to do that. Aside from that, we're going to move along to removing this cover right along here. You're going to find a mounting bolt right up here. There'll be another one over on the other side that we're going to grab, and then 2 mounting nuts right along this area. Remove all 4. Just going to hold onto that tray. Remove it from the truck. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is apply gentle pressure underneath the fuel tank because we're going to try to hold it up. After that, we're going to remove our straps that hold the fuel tank up. So there's 1 mounting bolt for this front strap. Now we're just going to carefully lower this down. We want to be very careful because there is still going to be a couple things on top of the fuel tank that we're going to have to access. So now we're going to remove the wiring that goes to the top of the tank. You can easily access this right from the front. You're just going to reach along like this. There's a little tab right where my index finger is. It's almost towards the rear of this. Go ahead and squeeze on that and then lift this up and off of the fuel pump. Now follow that wiring. You're going to notice that it's attached to the fuel tank right here. Go ahead and pop that clip off of there. The next thing that I want to do is come right up along this area here. There's a pivot point. If you just go ahead and take out this clip right here. Reach up, slide out this pin. Now you can fully remove this. Do the same to the front. Lowering this down. Just do it slowly and double check to make sure you have everything disconnected. Now with this on the ground, nice and safe so it's not going to fall off of anything, we're going to continue on to spraying this area off with air so we can remove any of the debris. With this whole area blown off the best we can, the next thing I want to do is take a crayon and I'm just going to mark one of these lines. Once I mark the line, I'll go ahead and mark the old fuel pump as well. And that way there, once we go to put this all back together, we'll remember which one goes where. Also, when I do this, I also want to take my crayon, and you're going to find that you have a little triangular tab on this. We want to also mark the fuel tank where that goes. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a yellow crayon right on this as well. And that way there, once we go ahead and spin this to tighten it, it's going to tell us exactly where we need to end up. Now let's move along to these yellow tabs. These yellow tabs hold the lines into the fuel sender right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get along here, gently pry it away. Slide that tab right out of there. You can give this a little wiggle, draw it up and away. Do the same for this one. Okay. Now we can just set these aside. Now the next thing we need to do to get this out of here, we're going to spin this outer ring right here. When you do it, spin it counterclockwise, but also pay attention. There's some little tabs that run along the inside here. Those are little locking tabs. If it seems as though they're getting caught, just go ahead and pry them away. Now as I do this, I'm going to use a pry bar and my rubber mallet. I want to be very careful not to make a spark of any sort around this area. Right? Inspect this, make sure it doesn't look like it's damaged in any way. If you see a crack or anything that looks like one, you're going to want to replace this. This looks fine, so I'll set it aside. Now we can carefully grab onto this. We're going to lift it up and out of the fuel tank. Just be very careful because there's going to be a lot of fuel located inside of it. I'm just going to tip this for a little while and let it drain into the fuel tank. All right, there it is, friends. Now with this opened up, it really couldn't hurt to take a peek inside. If you see a little bit of debris, it's really not too big of a deal, but if you see a lot, well, of course that's something that you're probably going to want to deal with. Now after you've inspected it, go ahead and come over here and we're going to take off this seal. It's just a little rubber O-ring. We'll set that right aside, and then along this channel right here, you just want to wipe that out with a nice rag. Now with this area nice and clean, let's go ahead and take our new gasket from our kit. We're just going to lay it flat down inside here, make sure that it's not caught on anything. This looks great, and now we can grab our fuel pump. Now before we can install this into the truck, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and put the leveler on here. So what you want to do is take the little tab, you're going to slide it into its corresponding hole, line it up with the pitons right across here, and then just push it in. Listen for the click, give it a little tug. Obviously you don't want to break this off and damage it, and then just make sure it functions the way that it should. Let's get it in the truck. Okay, it's time to put the fuel pump in here. Pay attention to this tab right along here. That's going to line up with the tab right in this area. Now just take this, come down from an angle. That way there we can get our level sensor in there. Slide this right down. We're going to line up this tab with where it belongs. And then we're also going to put this on at the same time. Now when you put this on, you want to make sure that it's completely level. If it's off kilter, you're going to have an issue. Okay, so now that it's snug, the next thing we need to do is bring it around so it's at the original point that when we removed it. So I marked this area where I have the triangle. I need to bring this all the way around to this area. So I have it lined up in the original position. This looks pretty great. So let's go ahead and pop these caps off of there and get our lines back reattached. Just going to slide my line right in there. Inside our bag came with brand new clips. I'm going to take that clip. You've got the little flippy-do here. That's going to be facing up. Slide it right in there. Listen for a click. Give it a nice tug. You want to make sure these are secure. If they're loose and they come off, obviously another issue. Now it's going to be time to get this back up and into the truck. Of course, once we get it up there a little bit, we're going to want to make sure that we connect this back in. We're going to re-secure it right over here, but also as we go up, we want to make sure that we have this going up and over the frame. Just going to put that line up and over the frame there, right along where the fuel inlet tube is. Okay, that's secure. Double check it, make sure it doesn't fall off. And now let's clip this in as well. Now let's bring this all the way back up and install our straps. Make sure you put in your clip. Okay, let's go ahead and snug it up. Do the same to the rear. Now up in the back, let's go ahead and reconnect our clip here. We'll grab this hose, slide it on there, and then of course lock it in. Make sure it's secure. Now let's do the fuel inlet. Let's get this out of the way. Grab our inlet tube, slide it right down onto the fuel tank, and then tighten up our clamp. Okay, just make sure that's nice and tight. You definitely don't want any fuel coming out of this when you're fueling up at the fuel station. Now back up along the outside of the frame, let's go ahead and reconnect this fuel line as well. And then of course we'll put the cover on it to protect it. Now in front of the fuel tank, let's go ahead and reconnect these lines as well. Listen for a click, give it a nice tug. Let's get the support out of the way. Let's get our protective cover back on here. Snug them up. Now that we have the fuel tank back up and in there, the next thing that we're going to want to do is reconnect our negative battery terminal. But think about this real quick. If you have any fuel vapor in the air because you're in an enclosed area, or even some gasoline on your hands, and you make a spark right along here, there's going to be an issue. So make sure you evacuate any of the vapor from the air, and of course make sure you have clean hands. For me personally, I just have to put this under there to hold that bolt up. Put our cables on there. Then of course we'll snug it up. Once you have it on there, just double check to make sure it's nice and secure. Okay friends, we got the fuel pump in there. What's left to do now? Go ahead and start up the truck. Let it run for a minute. Take a peek underneath. Make sure you don't have a fuel leak. Aside from that, take it for a road test.